The president has pushed back on these changes to the debate format. What do you make of that? Isn't a more civil discussion without interruptions the best way to serve the American people?
Oh, Emily, I always prefer a civil discussion, but I think what we have to realize is President Trump was on the stage last night, and at times it seemed that he was having to push back against Vice President Biden and also Chris Wallace. And what I do think would be helpful would be an understanding that if they're going to make that 2-minute statement, they get that time. Now, supposedly everything had been agreed to in advance. Maybe there was too much of moderator and not enough discussion back and forth. And I have to tell you, talking to Tennesseans today, they wanted to see the moderator out of the way and just let Biden and Trump ask each other the questions and have a discussion. And if they argued, let them argue, but let the American people hear them give a complete answer and not get most of the way through an answer and then they're cut off or then the topic changes. They would like a more free-flowing exchange, you know. And President Trump has such a tremendous record on the economy. And there was a lot more he could have talked about on the economy. Vice President Biden never clarified his remarks around court packing. He never clarified his remarks around the rioting and the anarchy that is in some of the cities, around defending the police or defunding the police. So there were a lot of things, and there was confusion that the vice president had on stats, and he would stumble a little bit there. So it's fair to say, should the president just have said, talk some more, just talk and see if you can finally work yourself around to an answer?
Now, the president also wouldn't admit to his $750 federal income tax bill. He refused to denounce white supremacists. What do you make of that?
Well, on the taxes, I have read a couple of things today from different ones. I do not know the answer to that. He says he has paid millions of dollars in taxes, and taxes were paid. I don't know. I have not seen returns. You haven't seen returns. So we know that the New York Times is very good at hit pieces late in election cycles when they don't think people have the opportunity to appropriately respond. And I look at this as one of those hit pieces. When it comes to white supremacy, he should clearly denounce white supremacy and extremist groups, whether they're from the left or the right. You denounce these extremist groups. They have no place in civil society.
Now, speaking of extremism, we see it at exponential levels on social media, and this is an issue that I know you're taking on. You have introduced a bill that would look at Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which protects tech platforms from facing liability for the content their users post. What exactly would you like to see changed here?
What we need to do is clarify when liability protections can be used, kind of the who, what, when, where, and why of liability protections. And Section 230 should be a shield for innovators, but it should be a sword for big tech. When they get behind this shield and use it in a very opaque manner, terms of service, community standards, things that end up not being explained. And Emily, whether it is conservatives or churches or some of our entertainers or TV programming producers, movie producers in this wonderful creative community that we have in Tennessee, I hear from them their frustration when trailers for films are blocked, or when they have a promo on a TV show or new music that is out, or a church that says they have blocked our sermons or our praise and worship music. So there needs to be clarity to this. There also, in the legislation, what we would do is define who is an information content provider. This would bring more definition to the issue around people writing things in a comment section as opposed to the website that is actually publishing or editorializing on information. And then we are removing the phrase otherwise objectionable and making that language more specific.
Now, we're going to talk more about big tech in a moment, but Senator Blackburn, as we've been talking, we just got some breaking headlines that JP Morgan has found that more than 500 of its workers got U.S. virus relief funds. These are funds that were aimed at helping businesses get through the pandemic. Dozens of them apparently shouldn't have had access to these funds. You all are working on a new stimulus fund package.
Yes.
How do you make sure that those funds aren't used improperly, that they are getting to the people who really need them?
Well, and that is a part of the work that we are doing with the second round of PPP, to make certain that individuals who have had a loss, a significant loss of over 35% of their income in their business, that they have the opportunity to have that second round of PPP. Individuals that are in the live entertainment industry that went from having a healthy revenue stream to zero because concerts were canceled, venues were closed, immediately their entire revenue stream for the year gone. And we're being very careful about this. Marco Rubio, who is chairing the Small Business Committee, and Susan Collins have worked very carefully on this. There is a lot of conversations between small businesses and senators on this issue. This is an area that has had bipartisan agreement. Also, going after those that have fraudulently gotten these funds, this is something that we are reviewing very carefully.
Meantime, we've also just learned that the Senate does have enough votes to pass the stopgap funding bill, the vote ongoing, but enough votes to pass. What's your reaction to that?
Making certain that we don't have a government shutdown is important. I am disappointed that we're not getting some of the conservative provisions that we would really like to see, items we would like to have a vote on. We're going to continue to work on this. We'll see where this goes, and then we have to turn our attention to the Phase 4 bill. You know, I really wish the House would take up the bill that we had worked on in the Senate that dealt with the PPP, more money for schools, more money for vaccines, repositioned some of that $1 trillion that is already in the pipeline rather than appropriating additional money. We have to work ourselves back to a recovery economy. It is going to be important that we do that. There are going to be some sectors of the economy that are going to need more attention than others. And Emily, we have to be very attentive to that. And I tell you, we just appreciate hearing from people and getting their input and finding out where the pressure points really are in the day-to-day lives of so many small businesses and so many different entities, manufacturing sectors, things of that nature around the country.
So back to big tech. Obviously, tech companies facing antitrust scrutiny. You're calling for new regulation. At the same time, the Senate Commerce Committee has called on the CEOs of Facebook, Google, and Twitter to testify. What's the status of that? What do you want to hear from them?
We will consider issuing subpoenas for them to appear. We have to make certain that the internet, if they're going to say they are the public square, then we need to make certain that there is a good cop on the beat in that public square. We need to address privacy issues, and last week Chairman Wicker started moving privacy legislation through. Many of the provisions that you and I've talked about through the years that are in the Browser Act that I had authored when I was in the House, they are in the privacy bill. This is something that we're going to do on a bipartisan basis. We hope the House will join us on that. When it comes to finding out utilization of data, how we are handling much of what is happening with COVID, we need more information. If these companies are not going to come to us, then the chairman is within his right to bring forward a vote to issue subpoenas.
Now, we've been waiting for the Department of Justice to file a big antitrust case against Google.
Right.
I'm curious, do you think Google stands out more from the rest as, significantly more problematic?
One of the things that happens with Google is the way they utilize their access on search. The data mining that is done there of the consumers. Consumers are beginning to realize they're the product because of the data mining, the way Google preferences their ad sales, the way when you look at that sales tower, the way they preference people that are advertising with them, when they prioritize their search. You've got several different moving parts that are there with how Google runs that business, how they utilize that data, how they sell that data, how they organize their ad sales, the prioritization of that search, the way their algorithms will push forward and preference certain information and diminish certain information. And if you go to other search engines, of course, Google's the big one. They have, I think it is right at 95% of the business. And then you have smaller search engines. But what you get back as you run search in those different engines can be very different. And with Google and Google Business and the way they continue to grow that, to grow their book of business, I think it warrants closer looks. We will see. We are anticipating, but we do not know what and when DOJ is going to take an action.